That's good. Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Reagan Roden. Thank you all for coming tonight, and I'd like to give a special thank you to my special guest, Mr. Mines. He's my mentor throughout this year. Before I tell you about myself, I'd like to share a quote that I found by Jimmy Dean, and it says, "I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination." And I think this is exactly what ISM is all about. You have to put in the work that you want to get out, and this is more than just a high school class that you merely take to get the grades. This is something that you really put all of your efforts into to achieve what you never really thought you could in just a high school class. And so that's kind of why I took the ISM course as a second-year student and as a first-year student last year as well. So a little bit about me. I'm a senior here at Frisco High School, and this is my second year in ISM. Last year, I was under the mentorship, thankfully, of Dr. Linda Bass. She was the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources for Frisco ISD, and so I studied human resources. And I loved having her as a mentor. She was so helpful, and she started off as a teacher, and so she was really great, teaching me all sorts of things about human resources. And at the end of last year, for my final product, I was able to create a presentation for all of the elementary school principals for Frisco ISD. And I realized last year that there was a gap between the different generations in the workforce. And they have different ways that they communicate, and their loyalty is all different. And so I wanted to help the principals out by giving a presentation to help them bridge the gap between the different generations in their workforce, such as the teachers and the different assistant principals and things like that. So I was able to give that presentation, and I was very proud of that, and so that was part of the reason as well that I continued with ISM 2, because I knew that I would be able to achieve so much more as well. So another thing that's defined my life in the past is that I've moved 7 times, and in the past I've kind of seen this as an obstacle and something that I've had to go through, but now I'm choosing to see it as an advantage because it really has helped me create who I am today. And it's helped me become more flexible and adaptable, which is something that you really need to have if you're going to be in the business world. And so I really see it as an advantage for my future as well. I've also been really involved in Young Life, especially last year. I was on Team YL, which is a smaller group of students who get together and get to help lead and plan all of the events for Young Life. And so I really enjoyed that. That put me in a place of leadership, and I really love that. And then in school in general, I'm very determined and focused, and once I have a goal in mind, I'm going to achieve that goal, and I think that really helped me throughout ISM. So for ISM, we are required to conduct at least 5 in-person interviews with professionals of the topic that we're going to study, and this year my topic was finance. And so I was able to interview 8, which I was very thankful for. These are all the professionals. Mr. Mines from Impartial Services Group, and like I mentioned, he's my mentor for this year. 2 professionals from Frisco ISD, Dr. Fouch and Dr. Bankston. Mr. Russell from Continental Wireless, Deborah Gibbons from Mary Kay, Mr. Halford from Varsity All-Star, Mr. Grubbs from Southwest Securities, and Mrs. Salcido from McAfee. And so as you can see, I've had the opportunity to interview some very intelligent professionals. There are a lot of CFOs and financial executives, and I was really thankful for all those interviews. And as I was interviewing all of these people, I learned that there were some common themes that were present throughout all of my interviews, and so I thought I would share those with you all. So the first thing that was present throughout all of the interviews was they had all a common background, and most of them had either an accounting or finance degree. And I am learning that an MBA is becoming more common. Not all of the interviews that I had, all the professionals that I interviewed had MBAs, but it's definitely more necessary nowadays because the workforce is so competitive, and so it's more important to have an MBA. So I'm looking forward to working towards that as well in my future. And then also a lot of the professionals that I interviewed were CPA certified, and CPA is Certified Public Accountant, and to become a CPA you have to take an exam, and then every year you have to have certain training that you undergo, and you can choose what it is, but you just have to have that training, and if you do that you can continue to be a CPA. I also learned that a lot of the accounting people who started in accounting started in Big Four accounting firms, and so they worked off of that, and then they built their way up to becoming higher financial executives. And then if they were in the school district, like Dr. Bankston, they started out as a teacher and then they moved to being maybe a principal and then switched over to the business side, which is actually was their goal at the beginning, but they knew they had to work their way up that way. So a lot of the daily roles and responsibilities of these professionals were similar. A lot of them managed accounting, finance, treasury, and tax functions, developed and managed a budget, coordinated financial action, and prepared financial statements. But I learned that a lot of these roles and responsibilities depended on the company's size. So a CFO of a smaller company is going to be able to wear a lot more hats and have a wider range of responsibilities. They're not as focused on just one thing because there's not as many employees in that company. Whereas with a larger company, a CFO might have a more narrow focus and they might not do as many things as a smaller company CFO because there are so many employees that are specialized in different things that they don't have to do that. I also learned about the relationships that a CFO has. They work really closely with the CEO, the staff, and their executive team, and so I thought that was really interesting. And when I was starting out learning about finance, I figured that someone who was in finance or accounting was someone who was sitting behind their desk and wasn't getting a lot of human interaction. So I was really surprised that almost every person that I asked said that they got about or at least 75% of their time they were spending with people. And so they're meeting with people, they're coordinating with people, they're meeting with their team and the other departments in their company. And so I thought that was really interesting and actually surprised me. Next is the obstacles and rewards that a lot of them faced and had. And so some of the obstacles differ between public and private companies. For public companies, they have to publish their financial data every quarter. And so I learned that sometimes at those times when they're having to publish that, it can become more stressful for that CFO. And so that can be an obstacle at some times. Also, especially working in the school district, you have to work a lot with quick growth. Like the school district is growing really fast, and so they have to keep up with that and keep up with their budgets and all of their demands and keeping their employees up to date. And then rewards, a lot of them found it very rewarding to see the outcome of their efforts and help shape a vision or goal for their company. And I think that that's very important, and a lot of them said that seeing how they hired someone or put someone in a different position than they were formerly that they thought would fit them better, seeing that outcome and how that benefited them was very beneficial and rewarding. Okay, there were 3 necessary skills that showed up in almost every interview that I did. The first one is to make sure that you can communicate. It's very important and vital that you can communicate with others and get your thoughts across effectively. Next, you have to be very analytical. As a financial executive, you have to be able to analyze data and look at it and look at forecasts of what they think will happen, and so that's very important. And then you also have to be able to collaborate with others. Like I said, they're spending about 75% of their time with other people and different departments and other executives, so you have to be able to both put your own thoughts into, give your own thoughts and ideas, but then also be able to collaborate and compromise with others as well. Okay, the last thing that I asked each of the professionals that I interviewed was if they had any advice for me if I were going to become a CFO or financial executive. And so one of the biggest things that I learned is to intern. Interning is super important. Although college classes give you that basic basic foundation, interning gives you the actual experience that you can use to further your knowledge and get actual on-the-job training. Also, I learned from Michael Russell that it's very important to ask questions. He said that when he started out, he didn't really ask a lot of questions, he just learned from his mistakes. And while learning from your mistakes is a good thing, you can actually take out a lot of your mistakes if you ask questions in the first place. And so I learned that that's really important. Also, like I said before, a lot of them started out with accounting or finance degrees, and MBAs are becoming more common, so I definitely want to work in that direction once I get into college. And I learned from Jessica Salcido that networking is extremely important, especially with LinkedIn that we have now. A lot of professionals are able to network and keep their contacts. And we actually have a contact log for ISM, and I've been keeping up with the contacts that I've created from this year and last year, and it's really helped me build that contact list, and it'll help me in the future as well when I'm looking for jobs or internships. And then the last thing is that both in life and as a CFO or financial executive, you need to think long-term and be open-minded. It's really important as a CFO to think in the long term and be able to forecast what you think is going to happen for your company and not just be so short-term in here and now. And then you have to be open-minded and be able to collaborate with others and take their thoughts into consideration as well. So after all of those interviews, we as ISM students are supposed to choose one person from those professionals that we interviewed as to ask to be our mentor. And so I had a tough time deciding who I wanted to ask, but I really felt that Mr. Michael Mines would be a really great fit and be able to teach me a lot. And so I asked him, and he accepted it, and I'm so grateful for that. And Mr. Mines is the CFO for Impartial Services Group, and I'll talk a little bit about his company's operations later, but his main role is to direct all the financial aspects of ISG as far as operations, accounting, treasury, IT, and human resources. And so far he's taught me so much, he's been so helpful, and I've learned so much about finance, so I'm so thankful for him. So outside of my primary research, I conducted other secondary research, and then we also had 2 events in ISM that I wanted to share that I learned a lot from. So the first thing was our UNT visit. We as an ISM class were able to go to visit UNT and choose classes that we wanted to attend that we thought would benefit us and teach us about our topic as well. So I sat in on an accounting and finance class. And this gave me an extremely valuable experience, showing me what types of classes I would be in next year, and I found that very beneficial. Also, we had the Business Symposium, which is a little bit like a science fair where everyone has their board set up and everything that they've done so far this year. And I was in there I did the Business Symposium last year as well, and it's taught me a lot of professionalism, talking with other professionals. I was able to explain my topic to others, so not only was I explaining finance to others, but I kind of was teaching myself in a way as well, things that I didn't really know I knew that I was explaining to other people. So I found that really helpful. And then 2 of my research assessments that I did that led into my original work and then my product are an assessment over a Kraft Budgets article, and this article was a case study over Kraft Foods UK, and it outlined what a budget is and their importance. And so a budget, kind of similar for a personal budget, is just a financial plan for a company's expected future results. So anything that they think is going to happen for their costs and their expenses, as well as their income, is outlined on a budget. And then it gives a clear plan and goals for employees. So that's also a source of motivation for employees. They're able to see what their plan is as a whole company, and I think that's very important. Also, I watched a budget projections video online, and it showed an actual budget and how to go through and calculate the different things. And I thought that was very helpful because it showed me the different components that are involved in a budget. And I'll talk about later in my product, I actually created a budget. And so it goes through the different income sources and the different expenses that a company has to spend for. And then I was also able to see that budgets are very helpful to assess a company's progress through budget analysis. So by looking at that budget, you can see what your company is doing well, what your company isn't doing so well at, what they might need to cut spending for, and so forth. Okay, so for my original work, I wanted to incorporate something that my mentor does, as well as the finance side. And so his company deals a lot with recalls. They're kind of like a consulting company to automakers. And so I looked a lot at auto safety recalls. So my first part of my original work was actually just researching auto safety recalls. And then I incorporated that into finance and created a budget, a very simplified budget. So first I asked myself, what are auto safety recalls, how are they affecting auto parts manufacturers, how are they affecting automakers, and how are they affecting the Impartial Services Group as a company. Okay, so first is what are recalls. When an automobile has a serious defect, the automaker has to report it to NHTSA, and that's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and they file a recall. And a recall just says that the car or a part on the car has a defect and it needs to get fixed, and so ISG will come in and help the automakers make sure that that defect is fixed. And so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, governs these recalls and publishes guidelines and regulations for these manufacturers when a recall is filed. And the reason this is so important recently is that last year in 2014, more than 62 million vehicles were recalled in the US. And so it kind of blew up, and so I thought that would be very interesting to do for my original work as well. So the auto part makers are the source of the defects because these are the parts are the things that are being defected and then recalled. So they had to go through a lot of losses financially. They were having to pay to increase their production for the replacement parts, which were most likely given out for free. And so they were having to increase their production, spend more for that. And one of the main auto part manufacturers that was hit huge last year financially was Takata Airbags. And they are a Japanese manufacturer of airbags that go in a lot of US cars. And they had to pay $212 million to improve the quality of their airbags to ensure that this defect would be gone and they could replace these products. And then they had to, they're going through an ongoing investigation of their company because there is suspicion that the company might not have told all the information that they knew when they knew it. And so they might have known about the defect before they actually told NHTSA. And so that's a problem, so they might face future fines for that. Also, the effect on automakers. Automakers are also hit both in the media and financially because the automakers are the ones that are looking like it's their problem, even though it's not really. And so they're having to buy more expensive parts, so obviously that increases their expenses to make sure that the parts have better quality so that they look safer to consumers. And then they have to work to retain the loyalty of consumers, which is where ISG comes in. Okay, so ISG, their role in recalls is to make sure that the consumer, once they're notified of a recall, to make sure that that consumer goes and gets that defect fixed. So they first have to do everything they can to notify consumers of recalls, and I believe the minimum that they have to do is send at least 2 mailings to that person. And then they have to handle customer complaints and questions and ensure that it's fixed and that they go to the dealership. So because of all of this, their sales were expected to increase in 2015, and that is proving correct. And so that means that they are having more automakers coming to them and contracting with them to help them out with the recalls. So with all of that, I created a budget projection. So Mr. Mines and I went into their conference room and he wrote down on the whiteboard some numbers and these things on the left side which show all of the things that go into the budget. So it's income, payroll, benefits for those people on the payroll, other direct costs, which includes the mailings and telephones, everything that it costs to actually perform the service. And then the total direct cost is just all 3 of those things. And then the gross margin is basically how much you make after your costs are taken out of your income. And the goal of a budget projection is to look at that gross margin and make sure that your percentage of gross margin from income is increasing over time, because that means that not only are your sales increasing, but you're also becoming more efficient and you're getting more out of your money. So that was my original work, and that really benefited me in preparing me for my product, which I will tell you about now. So for my product, I had a lot of different ideas, and it was difficult at the beginning because I wasn't sure exactly what to create for something for finance, because there's not a whole lot of things that you can create for finance and actually show to people. So I decided to make a more in-depth budget projection, kind of sampled on my simplified one and original work. So my initial idea was to create an in-depth budget projection for a company of my choosing and then analyze the results. So I was thinking that I was going to find a public company with published data online that I could just input into this table and maybe do a few calculations. And then at the end, the biggest part would be analyzing all of this data and seeing the results of the different projections and then what actually happened. But it's not that easy to find published data because you go online and you look at all of these annual reports and it only gives you the overall income and maybe a few different costs. But really when you're looking at a budget projection, you have to look at each individual cost that it costs to make that product. So what actually ended up happening is I created a budget projection for a soda company, which was my theoretical company that I was going to create. And then I analyzed the before and after effects of adding the production of snacks. So I was going to say that I was going to launch a snack line and then see how that affected my company. So the process. So as I said before, the obstacle was finding actual data to put in this budget projection. And to fix that, I still had that obstacle once I decided that I was going to create the soda company because I still had to have those numbers. And so my dad works for PepsiCo, which was very helpful. And I spoke with him about the different relationships. He couldn't give me actual data because obviously that's confidential. So he gave me different relationships, like this much comes from income, this much percentage comes from costs and things like that. And so with that, I was able to work with Mr. Mines to kind of get some vague numbers that I could then calculate and use for my purposes of just analyzing this projection. So after I got those kind of relationships between the figures and the budget, I was able to outline the basics of my company. So I decided that my company was going to start out in a small town such as College Station, and it was going to be a startup company. So it was only going to be 5 years old, so it was fairly new, but it was kind of on its feet enough to add a snack line. And then I was going to start with only soda and add snacks, like I said. And then I was going to decide that soda would only be sold to restaurants. So the benefit of this is that I didn't have to calculate how much it was going to cost to bottle all of the sodas, how much it was going to cost to pay for different things like that, bottling and all that. So I would only have to calculate the different costs per gallon and that I would sell to restaurants. So after I did that, I had to determine what should be included and created the budget projection spreadsheet. So like I said, I had to include all the ingredients, how much it was going to cost to transport this to different restaurants, and things of that sort. And then I analyzed the effect of taking on another soda consumer and adding the production of snacks. So I learned that Mr. Mines gave me a scenario that a soda consumer, another restaurant, came to my company and said that they wanted to get my soda in their restaurants for a deal, like a better deal, so a lower cost than I was selling it to other places. And I learned that by taking that deal, although I was giving it to them at a lower price than other consumers, it was actually increasing my gross margin that I told you guys about earlier, and so it actually benefited my company in the long run. And then adding the production of snacks, I learned that by adding the snacks, it decreased the sales of soda, which I wasn't expecting, but there's more focus on the soda, and so I'm actually analyzing that right now, and I'm not completely finished with that part of it. But I did learn that it decreased the sales of soda, and I had to increase marketing in order to market those snacks that I would be selling as well. And so I was able to see the different relationships between the different figures and the numbers after adding snacks. So you can't really see it, and okay, well, you can kind of see it. But I'm going to have to figure out a better way to situate all of this. But this is so far what I have of my budget projection. You can see that there's a lot of numbers and calculations that went into this. And so I started out with the income and the different types of things that I would need for the different costs. So the income came from the gallons of soda that would be sold to consumers, and then the snacks, which you can see in the beginning there's 0 for the snacks, and then after that it's added in and it changes the gross margin. And then I had to outline the different expenses. So the cost of goods sold would be how much it costs to make each individual product. And then the distribution cost would be how much it costs to have the truck, the fuel for the truck, how much it costs to just basically get the product to the consumers in the restaurants. And then SG&A stands for General and Administrative Costs, and so that includes the payroll for the CFO, the CEO, the salesperson, telephone, internet, rent for office space, and other things like that. And so after that, I was able to come up with the earnings before income tax, called EBIT or EBIT, and so that basically shows how much you're actually earning. It's similar to the gross margin, but it's overall and not just for the expenses. So that was my product, and I'm very proud of it. I'm not completely finished. I have to finish the analysis over everything that happened, but I will finish that fairly soon. So the results so far and things that I've learned from doing this product is the importance of budgets in a company. As a CFO, you have to learn about the relationships involved in the budgets between the different figures, like I told that my dad helped me out with as well, and so I've learned that as well. I learned how to create a budget from scratch, which most people would be able to have some of those figures that are concrete, and like I've sold this much, and I've had this much income. So I was able to learn about those different things and create an in-depth Excel spreadsheet. I've never created something this in-depth, and it's a lot of figures and calculations, and so I've learned how to do that and kind of manage everything in that way. And then I've learned the role of a CFO in a startup company. CFOs have a lot to do as far as the finances of a startup company. They have to figure out all the different costs and expenses, like I said. And this is something that a CFO will do very often as they're working with their budgets and planning for the future in their company. So that is my product and my original work and everything that I've learned so far this year. And over my 2 years of ISM, I've evolved so much. I've become more professional. I've learned how to talk to professionals, make cold calls, shake hands professionally, dress professionally. I've gained the skill of public speaking, which I'm still continuously working on, but it's definitely become a lot better than it was in the very beginning. I've learned how to effectively research different topics that I'm studying, such as finance or human resources, and I've learned time management. There's a lot of deadlines, like it will be in college, in ISM, and you have to get your stuff in on time, and so I've learned how to manage my time in that way as well. And then I've also just grown as a person. I've become more confident. I believe in myself more, and I think it's crazy how much you can achieve if you put your mind to it, and I just think it's amazing how much I think I've achieved and grown in my potential throughout this year. And the last thing is I've gained contacts and advice from professionals, which will be vital in my future. So I've learned so much about finance and have a greater understanding of the day-to-day responsibilities of a CFO or financial executive. And I've decided that finance really makes sense to me, but I still really enjoyed human resources last year. So next year, I'm going to be going to Texas A&M, and I'm going to be in the Mays Business School. And I'm just going to do general business next year, and then I'm going to decide between finance or human resources for my sophomore year. And I benefited immensely from my experiences in ISM last year and this year, and I can't wait to see what's to come in my future. I'd like to thank once again my mentor, Mr. Mines, for all the assistance and knowledge that he's given to me, or you. You've always been right there whenever I needed your help, and you've helped me so much throughout this year, and I can't thank you enough. And I'd also like to thank my family for supporting me throughout this year. You guys have helped me when I've been switching between finance and HR these past 2 years, and probably think I'm crazy, but you guys have helped me a lot, and it's been really beneficial to me. And then I'd also like to thank Coach Goff for everything she's done for me in the past 2 years. She's been a little support system for all of the ISM students, but for me as well, individually, and so I'm really grateful for that as well. So thank you all for coming, and if you have any questions, I'd love to answer those now. Thanks. I forgot to set my time.